welcome to today's episode of MicroConf On Air. I'm your host, Rob Walling. Usually every other Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, we live stream for about 30 minutes. We haven't been live streaming for about the past 5 weeks, I think, because of MicroConfs. We had 4 in-person events in 4 different cities, which is pretty amazing. But on this show, we cover topics related to building and growing ambitious SaaS startups that bring us freedom and purpose and allow us to maintain healthy relationships. So welcome back. I'm excited to be here. It's fun to be back on the microphone. Today, I'm going to be talking about a State of Independent SaaS, the State of Independent SaaS. We're going to talk about how we're planning for it and, frankly, ask for thoughts from you, the live stream listeners / audience, about what we should do differently. And maybe things that we've done well and things that we could improve, or just questions that you have that you'd like to see answered in the State of Independent SaaS, because we created this 3 years ago now. So we've done 2 of these State of Independent SaaS surveys and reports. If you go to stateofindiesaas.com, you can view the full report and download it and see. I think it's 75, 80 pages. It's several hundred person hours to do this. And we don't charge for it. We don't charge to download it. I believe maybe there's an email gate on it, but we don't charge people who take it. We don't charge for the data. This truly is something that we wanted to put together for the bootstrapped and mostly bootstrapped SaaS community, that we put all of that cumbersome phrase, bootstrapped and mostly bootstrapped, under independent, right? So independent SaaS companies are those that either are fully bootstrapped, maybe have raised a small amount of funding, but really haven't gone on the venture track, where suddenly usually find yourself not being as in control of your company or your trajectory or your destination, right? So we have had a great response to this. I believe we've had more than, across the 2 reports, we've had more than 2,000 SaaS companies respond and give data. Our data analysts have told us that by the time you get up even to, I think it was like 500 to 800, like you have really statistically significant information. And so that's why we put it together. And we put it together really to help, because there's a ton of these for venture-backed startups. And I frankly, and me and the rest of the MicroConf team, kind of got tired of opening a report and then saying, yeah, this doesn't apply to me though. Like, this doesn't apply to independent SaaS companies, or bootstrap SaaS companies. The numbers are all different when you have 10 million in the bank. The market sizes are different. The head counts, just all of that stuff. It's so different. There's 70% the same, maybe 80%, but like this covers all of it and gives you an idea of that. So the survey itself, if you haven't taken it, we're going to be launching it here in the next couple of weeks. We'd really appreciate if you have a SaaS company doing at least $1 in MRR. We'd love for you to take the survey, and that helps us get good data that we can then distribute and help all of us understand this space a little better. So if you are interested, certainly if you have questions, post them in the Slack. Producer Xander is in there taking notes. If you want to come on the show right now, the live stream, and come on as a video with your video and just ask me a quick question, or we can talk for a minute or 2 about it. I'd like to keep it on topic, of the State of Independent SaaS report. Please feel free to. If you post in Slack, I think Xander can DM you a link to get into StreamYard here, which is what we're using for this. I have some good comments coming in from YouTube. So we've had a couple comments from the Slack already, and then I'll keep talking about why we do it and what's in the report and such. But Tony asked, who is using code versus no code? That would be an interesting question to ask. I'll think about that. I'm concerned that, it's like 1% no code, and because it's probably going to be a really small number of SaaS companies, but I am curious. And so if we can fit it in, it's always we always wind up cutting, 10 to 15 questions right at the end, things that we do want to know, but we don't want to have everyone spend 20 minutes filling out a survey, right? Most people get it done in about 8 minutes. If you know your numbers, 5 to 8 minutes. And if you have to look some stuff up, maybe it's 10 to 12, but we like to keep it under that 10-minute mark. So I like that. It's a topical thing. And that's something producer Sandra and I have been talking about, is what are the things that have changed in the last year or 2 that wouldn't have been on the surveys? And no code is one, right? Because that's like a new it's been around for a long time, but it's a newer named movement that people are getting behind. And so I could see that being pretty helpful to know. Spencer asked, or he indicated, I'd like to see where founders are located on a map view. I agree. I would love to do this. So we tried to do it the first year, and there were 342 different cities. And so it got really muddy and complicated. It's not like, that's one thing, like with venture capital, I think it's like 80% of venture capital in the United States is in like four cities or 5 cities or something. And that's not how independent SaaS is. We're distributed all around the world, and there's 340 something cities where people are located. And the number one city had like 4% of the company. So it isn't even like it's truly a long tail, and there's no fat head is the expression. It's not like the top one has 80% and then it's distributed. It's like top one had 4%. I mean, it's just all over the place. So it makes it a bit challenging to have a map view, but we did then, I think we did the top 30 or something, and we plotted them on a map, and that was manageable. But it's kind of weird to cut it off. So anyways, all that said, I want to see that too, and I'm hoping that this year that we can make that happen in some form or fashion. Also wanted to call out, producer Xander just reminded me, we hit 10,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/MicroConf. If you are not subscribed, you should hit that bell. And we are putting out live streams a couple times a month. We're putting out, new talk videos. I'm going to be recording some short tutorial videos. It's all kinds of cool stuff that we're putting there. So youtube.com/MicroConf. Congratulations to us on hitting 10,000 subscribers. We launched it in February of 2020, right before COVID hit. So it was kind of fortuitous anyways, because then people had a bunch of time to be able to watch videos. And that was in 18 months to get there. I feel pretty good about that. All right. If you have other questions, feel free to post them. Otherwise, I'm going to be talking about State of Independent SaaS report, because this is something that I had wanted to do for probably 6 or 7 years, but I wanted to do it well, right? It's like I said, hundreds of person hours. And so we needed budget to be able to construct the survey itself. We needed a good enough distribution. We needed a big enough list, which MicroConf now has, but it really didn't have 5 years ago, to be able to get enough founders to make it significant. Because if you get 70 founders to respond, it's just kind of weak data. I think probably, well, I don't know what the number is. Maybe 300-400 is probably the smallest I would want to have statistically significant information. So some of the things that we ask about that I think are pretty interesting if you're a SaaS founder, it's questions like, people ask, should I have a credit card up front? Should I have a free trial? Should I have a freemium model? How long should I expect for my AdWords or my pay-per-click to pay back, right? How many months? And those are the kinds of things that we're asking. And so you can go in and you can see what percentage of SaaS companies, independent SaaS companies, have a free trial, have a freemium plan, ask for credit card up front. And what we've seen, actually, it's cool to have 2 years now, and we're going to have a third year, is we're starting to see changes over that time where more companies they're moving the free line. More companies went freemium. Fewer companies were asking for a credit card than the year before. More companies have a free trial. And so, I think as things become more and more competitive, you want to own the lead earlier, right? You want to own the lead sooner. That winds up, I think that's what's driving that. But I'm curious to see. We only have 2 data points now, and as you know, through the more years that we can watch this, we can figure out if this lines up kind of with my intuition or rule of thumb. Because there was a bunch of stuff. I remember people used to say, how many people at MicroConf have raised some type of funding, even if it's 50 grand or a couple $100,000. And I would always say, I think it's like 10 or 15%. Well, it turns out that number happened to be correct. It was just a gut feel for me, but we were able to validate that in independent SaaS, obviously, which a large portion of that is captured here with MicroConf, that in independent SaaS, it's about 10 or 15% that have raised funding. If you want to see the full findings from last year's report, we have a YouTube live stream where I present, well, it isn't the full findings, but it is the majority. It's a lot of the kind of notable things that we pulled out. I did a 30-minute live stream back in January. Obviously, you can download the report and look through it. It has our commentary and thoughts on notable surprises. Both surprises. Well, it's surprises, both good and bad, right? Things that we thought would be higher or lower, and then things that we expected to happen, right? Where we had the rule of thumb of, I thought it would be that 10 or 15%, and it wound up, being that. So I won't go through a bunch of the pages here, but I think Xander is yeah, there he goes. There's a link to the 2021. So that live stream was actually kind of fun to send. I was going to say to record, but of course we didn't record it. You should watch back at that if you want to find out more. Just get a high level overview or look through the report itself. All right. No one has any questions, huh? Yeah. Call for questions. If you have a question, post it in the Slack. Or you can obviously come on and do a video question. I think I want to circle back to the kind of why we do this. Obviously, there's a lot of reports for the venture capital crowd, and that's what the majority, we are essentially a subculture of startups, right? Startups is this huge umbrella that includes, biotech and physical, making drones and making physical products and all that stuff. And then if you go down to, say, software is a subset of that, and even that includes software that that runs the Facebook games they used to have. Remember when Farmville was a big deal? Mobile apps. There's all types of software. So then a subset of that is SaaS, subscription software, B2B SaaS. And then within B2B SaaS, the prevailing narrative is venture capital, right? It's that to do it, you that you need to raise venture capital in order to do it. And then we are a subset of that. But what I've noticed, actually, I almost sent this tweet out, which was it's a graph of the number of, I believe it's the number of funded startups in Crunchbase is decreasing. And it might even be the number of funded SaaS startups. I forget. But the graph is dropping every year since like 2014. And what we've seen with MicroConf is the number of bootstrap or independent SaaS companies is growing every year. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think people are tired of the narrative and wanted, like, the reason that everyone was raising venture capital to do B2B SaaS is because that was the only way they knew how, right? And that's what the big narrative is. And we have been trying to change that, right? To shift the narrative to be like, no, this is another option. And for most people, for most companies, it's actually a better approach to basically bootstrap or mostly bootstrap your company. Venture capital has its place, and venture capital is obviously it's successful monetarily, and it is needed for certain types of companies and in certain situations. And I would never tell someone to not raise venture capital. I would just say, know what you're getting into. And 99% of companies don't need it, right? 1% of maybe of tech startups or of SaaS startups maybe need VC, and we're the other 99%, right? That's what MicroConf's been about. That's what TinySeed's about, is funding and education and community for the other 99%. All right. I am going to talk about some Bootstrapper news because we don't have any questions. I guess the State of Independent SaaS report is so amazing already. Xander and I will be making changes to it, by the way. I appreciate your suggestions so far, and we've been looking through it to figure out what changes we want to make. I have a couple topics, and I wanted to, dang it, where are those? I'm looking through my Trello board here. Oh no, I know, I put it in the outline. All right, well, see, I already talked about the MicroConf sale, the MailChimp sale. Sorry, I had an abbreviation that confused me. I did want to let folks know, if you haven't heard, TinySeed is a fund, you've probably heard of it, but it's a fund that we started out of MicroConf when we saw the need that folks wanted to not go on the venture track, but they wanted to raise just enough funding and have just enough mentorship and advice to basically grow faster. And so TinySeed writes checks between, $120K for the first founder, and then, $180 for two and $220 for three. And we provide a year-long remote accelerator. And we've raised two funds in the US, totaling north of 31 million. And we're about to write our 60th check with our fourth batch. but we have struggled. I'll say this: it's very hard to support companies that are located around the world because the laws are so cumbersome. Every country is different. Finding legal representation everywhere is expensive, and even just figuring out what the tax implications are very expensive. So what we've done is we have our US funds, and then we are just starting to raise our Europe fund, and it's going to be the Europe time zone. So not only is it from the UK all the way east through Europe, but it goes south through the Middle East and Africa and such. So I am pretty excited about this. We've had a lot of interest from investors. So our TinySeed Europe fund is doing well. Obviously, if you're accredited and interested in investing in B2B SaaS companies in Europe, you should get in touch. Head to tinyseed.com/invest. Or if you're a founder in Europe, we're going to be able to support at least one, hopefully two. We don't know the number yet, but European entities, right? So there's each country, unfortunately, I wish there was an EU or a European entity, but it's not, right? Germany has their own, and UK has their own, and Luxembourg, and this and that. And so we're going to be looking at which one or two that we will be able to support such that people don't have to convert to a US entity. We've wanted to do this since the start, and it's just something that takes time, right? You can't do everything all at once. So I am excited about that. There's some questions coming in I'll jump to in just a second. But let me wrap this up. So we are also talking, we're hiring a program manager who is going to work with Tracy, who you've probably heard on Startups for the Rest of Us and may have seen her at a MicroConf, but she's our program director for TinySeed, and you'd work with her to basically run the European accelerator. So if you want to work with awesome, ambitious, mostly bootstrap SaaS founders and work with me and Einar and Tracy, you should head to tinyseed.com, and there's a jobs link at the bottom if you want to see what a program manager does. All right. Question. Do you guys have plans to have an awards and certification in the future, just like Michelin did for their restaurant Michelin stars? From Eli Odrelag. We haven't talked about that. We did an awards thing for podcasts, right? The SaaS Podcast Awards. And I believe you can head to saaspodcastawards.com to find a list of the 50 that were nominated. And then we had a winner in a few categories. And that was great fun last December. We have discussed potentially having company awards, but it's almost like, what would that be like? I guess we could have different categories. You'd have to think about it. We could have a top 100 list based on people that have to disclose revenue. There's like the Inc. 500, right? And you have to qualify for it based on growth. So we could do something like that, the MicroConf 100. I'm not sure I understand the certification piece. Eli, maybe you can post that back and Xander can relay that. But what would you be getting certified in? Would we say that stamp of approval, like this is a founder who knows what they're doing? Or would we say you're certified in that marketing? Or would we say your company is somehow certified in that your metrics are good or something like that? So I'm not sure what we do there. Question from Spencer. He said, how did the MicroConf... Yeah, let's just make this an AMA at this point, right? We have 10 more minutes. Just ask about anything. Doesn't need to be on topic. He's asking, how did the MicroConf in-person events go? Did the one-day local event model work well? That's a great question, actually. So the events were super fun. We have not done an event in 2 years. And... 2 years, and we did 4 events in 4 weeks. We had, I believe, north of 300 people at those events. Social distance, everyone was vaccinated, hand sanitizer all over the place, masked in most of them. It wound up being really fun, even in spite of like the COVID fears. The numbers were smaller than we would have had without COVID. Like I said, we had about 300 people across those events, and I think at capacity, if it was non-COVID, I think there would have been 450 or 500 people across them. So, but it was still totally worth doing. And the interesting part was that, to your question of the one-day locals, like, did the format work? Format absolutely worked. It was great. We started at like 10 or 10:30. There was a talk and then a short session and then lunch. And then we did some stuff in the afternoon. Then there was a happy hours, tons of time. And there was an hour in the morning for people to connect. And that was a big piece of it. Is we of course had the education, but the education and the talks from folks like myself and Asia Arangio and Jordan Gall, those are an excuse for us all to get together in a room. And then you're sitting in Boston or Portland or Oregon or Croatia, and you're saying, who around, I guess the 1 day formats, who around me lives in this city, right? And why don't we start hanging out once a month? Because you're other microconfers. And to be honest, we thought it would be a lot of early stage folks. We were gearing it towards early stage. Turns out that wasn't what happened. There were definitely some early stage folks, but there were a lot of folks who were further along. There were 6 and 7 figure businesses, and they just wanted to come for the community, and because it was easy. It's in their town, right? And you can drive 30 minutes or whatever and pay, $100, $200 to go to an event. So I thought the format worked very well. And I think people got a lot of value out of it. And, our surveys at the end show a very high NPS, right? Which means a lot of people would recommend it to a friend. And so I think overall, it was a lot of logistics. Producer Xander did a great job of pulling all that together. And it was a lot of travel. I think that doing it 4 weeks in a row was not ideal. We wanted to do a road show and it sounded like fun, but by the time we were at our 3rd or 4th event, we were pretty tired. So I think next year, in 2022, we will wind up spacing them out, having, whether we do one a month or whatever. We want some space between them so that we're not constantly on the road, is how it felt. But I think we'll make some minor tweaks, but to locals. But I think overall, the experiment worked, it succeeded. And yeah, just so you know, we now have a nice break, which is good to let COVID settle down. Our next event is in Minneapolis. It's MicroConf Growth in April. And so if you haven't gotten a ticket to that, it's going to be amazing. I mean, assuming, knock on wood, assuming COVID's gone, it'll be a nice 250, 270 person event, like back in the before times. And that's our flagship event. All right. In addition, I was trying to think of I had the MicroConf in-person event. Yeah, and, at a certain point, I was wondering, was this worth I always ask myself, is this the best thing we can be spending our time on, right? Because we only have so much bandwidth. And I feel like getting people together in a room was super valuable. I think that there was a lot of value both between the attendees and for us to be in front. It reminded me just how real this is, right? How there are so many amazing founders bootstrapping around the world who are ambitious and want to get it done. And it was fun to see folks and fist bump. Because of COVID, right? So you're fist bumping. I'm trying to think of what else to say about that. Producer Xander was reminding me that we are gearing up for our next remote event. We call it MicroConf Remote. It's a virtual event. And we did one back in March. And we do it's about 90 minutes a day over 3 days. And the last theme was early stage marketing approaches. So we covered Product Hunt, and we had, case studies of people who Derek Reimer did a Product Hunt launch. We had someone who did a bunch of stuff on Quora and had gotten, talked through exactly how they did it. We are working on the theme for our December MicroConf Remote, and I'm pretty sure we're going to do no code. So that actually is relevant to Tony's question earlier. There's a lot around it, right? And it's not just no code for building MVPs, which I think is what a lot of people think about, but you can use no code to, cobble together a support process. You can use no code for marketing. You can build a no code tool as lead gen. You can build a no code tool to do SEO. You can build no code tools to do a lot of things. I mean, I will say even MicroConf TinySeed is not a software company, right? But we use a bunch of no code type stuff. We cobbled together Reform and SavvyCal with Zapier to do automations. I believe Producer Xander uses Airtable for the mastermind matching, which is going on right now. That's another thing I should mention. But and we use Notion, which for both the podcast and a bunch of internal TinySeed stuff. So there's just a place for it. And I think that founders these days should be aware of it. So we'll be looking for some awesome speakers for that. If you happen to be, if you've done something super interesting kind of in this Bootstrapped SaaS world with no code, whether you built your MVP with it, whether you've used it at, any of the examples I've said, or done something else you think might be interesting, you should apply to speak. And we'll be getting that going soon. So obviously, head to microconf.com if you want to be on the list to learn about when that happens. Last thing, and then I think I'll sign off. Well, there's two things. I do want to thank Hey and Stripe. They're our headline partners. In 2020, they were in 2020, they were in 2021, and onward to 2022, and they've just been big supporters of everything we're doing with MicroConf. And the longtime supporters and the founders have been have attended MicroConf, and they've just seen the value of the community and really the quality of the folks who attend. So I want to thank them. Oh, two more questions. All right. Any opinions on blockchain app startups? I like the blockchain. I like crypto. We have yet to see a B2B SaaS offering that I would say from the TinySeed perspective, we have not funded one yet, but just because no one's applied that has fit, has made sense. But it's a quickly expanding place. The blockchain, NFTs, crypto. If I were starting a startup today, I would at least consider it. My big concern with it though would be, am I going to make something B2C? And you don't want to build a solution in search of a problem, right? It's like, just because there's new technology doesn't necessarily mean you should go build on it. It's like, what problem you're going to solve? I would start there. And then I would think, how can I go backwards, and how much can you validate this, right? So I like it though. Let's see, another question. Wondering if I should use Drip, user list, or ConvertKit for my pre-sale product fit survey landing page. I would, you could use MailChimp too, which is free. I would say, SendFox is pretty good and inexpensive. MailerLite, LITE. If you just want something super simple, those are the two that I hear people using these days that are just a lot simpler than what you said. Now, am I a fan of UserList? Absolutely. Drip as well. I have not used ConvertKit, but I think for your pre-sale product market fit landing page, Drip and ConvertKit are both too heavy duty. And UserList certainly is something that I would recommend. Someone wants to come join me for a minute. All right, let's get him on. Get him on the camera. Someone asked me about while he's getting hooked up. Any secrets you want to share about 2022? I don't know. I'm trying to think if we have any secrets. Oh, that's Xander's question. That's funny. It's like we're still planning it, and so I don't really have any big reveals. We're still working on like, where's MicroConf Europe going to be? How many locals are we going to host? Is there anything new? We'll do the State of Independent SaaS because we do that every year. But I can't think offhand of any big secrets that'll be coming. Let me see if there are any other questions. Concierge or landing page MVP? Question mark. I don't think that's a full question. All right. I got to tell you, it was fun to be in a room with startup founders again, to be honest. There we go. All right. Question. Would you recommend offering a service that caters to where your crowd segment is in their life career now, or build for where they will be in the future? It's an interesting question. It feels like I need more context. I'm going to be honest. Because it's kind of like, it depends on what exactly you're talking about. I would tend to build something someone needs to use today, not that they're going to need in a year. But if I'm building courses to educate, I'm going to be trying to build those to get people where they want to be in the future, if that makes sense. But most SaaS apps are, it's a need someone has today. That would be my loose rule of thumb. All right. Producer Xander, you want me to wrap it up? MicroConf Local London. Yeah. MicroConf Local London is in May of next year, May 18th. Keep that on your radar. MicroConf.com, obviously, if you want to be on the list. And you can indicate you're in London, then or you're in the UK, and then we can hit you up when that happens. Because I do believe we're going to once COVID's done, we're going to sell these locals out because there's just not a ton of capacity. We're trying to keep them small intentionally, and we have a pretty big audience in these local cities. Lastly, MicroConf Mastermind Matching is open. Head to microconfmasterminds.com. And that's something that we do a few times a year. And we've matched, I love these numbers Xander pulled. It's like we've matched more than 600 successful matches, more than 150 million in MRR or in ARR. And I don't remember the other thing. Oh, it's like 50 countries. I mean, it's just a real pretty amazing effort. And we've only been doing it. We've been doing it for like a year. But you head to microconfmasterminds.com, you answer a quick survey basically, and you pay a fee based on your ARR, and then you get matched up with other, I say MicroConf quality, bootstrapped and mostly bootstrapped founders. So it's a great place. For the longest time, we had folks saying, I want a mastermind. How do I get matched up? And it was always like, well, go post in the Slack or whatever. But like, this is the way to really get matched up in, with folks who are, at your stage, maybe a little ahead, who are within your time zone. I forget all the criteria we use, but it's stuff that we have from years of experience seeing successful masterminds run. So with that, I guess we had someone who was going to come on, but it looks like we're having some technical difficulties. So we are at time, and I think I'm going to take us out. So thanks for joining us again today. We'll be back again in 2 weeks with our regularly scheduled live stream. And I hope you have a good rest of your week.